Good morning students, I am Shravya Saneev Merugu and I am going to be teaching you guys today about the difference between adaptive functions of emotions and disruptive functions of emotions. As we know and we have been studying so far that emotions can have various degrees, various qualities, various ways in which they affect our body. So no emotion can really be classified as a good emotion or a bad emotion. Anger, when felt well and which helps us get out of difficult situations, is a good thing. But when it is felt in an overactivity phase, when we are feeling a lot of anger, it can become dangerous as well. Similarly, when we're feeling fear, fear can be adaptive. It can be good for us as well, where it is getting us out of dangerous situations, keeping us safe, keeping us aware. But it can also be disruptive when we are fearful of everything. Similarly, love also can be an emotion which can be adaptive or disruptive. It can be adaptive when it helps us develop close relationships, when it helps us know people better, when it helps us form lasting relationships with other people. But when it is disruptive, it can give place to jealousy, overprotectiveness, ego problems. So many things can happen, right? So based on the intensity, based on the quality, based on the kind of emotion that we are experiencing, any emotion can have either a positive affect with an A, or a negative affect. Okay, positive affects would result in adaptive functioning. Then on the other side, whatever it is disruptive, whatever is confusing, whatever is overactive, whatever is extreme can become disruptive to us. Adaptive and disruptive functions, when we understand that, it also helps us get a better picture of how to deal with somebody else's emotions. For example, you want to ask your dad or your mom for permission to go on a trip, right? You wait for when their emotional response is feeling like it is going to be an adaptive response, right? If your dad is already upset when he comes in through the door, you will not be asking him to go on this trip, right? You will wait for him to become in an adaptable place, right? You will wait for him to be in a good place to ask such a thing. So the way that you understand other people's emotions as well plays an adaptive function. With me so far? Yes. Okay. So emergency functions can also be played by things that are adaptive. I want you guys to keep a finger on where we're going. Emergency functions can also be carried out because of adaptive functions. For example, any kind of adaptive emotion can also help us mobilize ourselves. Ya to it is to get out of a particular situation, or it is to socially adapt to a situation. When it is to mobilize us, to kind of stimulate us to get out of a particular threatening situation, we call it a stimulating function of the emotion. It is stimulating us to get out of a difficult situation. Biologically, this is how it helps us, adaptive functions. Socially, how does it help us? Socially, understanding an other person's emotions and contributing to it plays an adaptive function for us, because we are socially able to interact with them in a much better way. Okay, so one biological function it is fulfilling, adaptive functions of emotions, and one social function it is fulfilling. With me so far? When I mentioned anger, when I mentioned fear, when I mentioned love, biologically how are they helping us adapt? Biologically, anger helps us protect our needs and get things done. Fear helps us get out of difficult situations. Love helps us form close lasting relationships. Socially, how does this help us? When we are angry, we are able to tell people what are my needs, what is making me angry right now, communicate what is a need that is unfulfilled, which I need to get fulfilled. When we are fearful, we are telling somebody that, you know, I am feeling threatened by the situation, I am not feeling safe, and so I need a particular kind of help in this situation. When it is love, socially, of course, it is helping us form lasting relationships. All right. Then let's move on to the next part of emotions being adaptive or disruptive. It is based on 4 qualities. 1, intensity. 2, cognition. 3, control. 4, quality. Okay. These 4 things come into assessment whenever we're judging any emotion as whether it is adaptive or disruptive. First is intensity. किसी भी चीज़ की intensity अगर बहुत ज़्यादा हो, it can become disruptive. With me? Agree? Next, cognitive. How much control do I have on the thought processes that this emotion is giving way to, right? The situation might not necessarily be that threatening, but my fear response is very, very high. that intensity that I'm feeling, that lack of cognitive control I am feeling on the situation can result in disruptive effects. With me so far? But if I feel like the intensity is less, my cognition is also working in a good fashion, I'm in control of the situation. We also spoke about the inverse proportionality between emotional reactions and cognition. जब emotional reaction बहुत high होता है, our cognition is running low. When our cognition is high, we don't give so much space to our emotional reactions. All right. Emotions can help us also anticipate and predict behavior. That example that I gave you about your parent and how you can predict their behavior based on what is the emotion they are showing. We'll come to that in a second. But I also want to talk to you guys about control and quality, which is the other two factors that I mentioned: intensity, cognitive control, and quality. Control and cognitive kind of sort of go together. Quality is what is the texture of the emotion, what is it doing to us, what is the quality of it, is it typically a pleasant emotion, is it typically an unpleasant emotion, what is the quality of it. Even if we talk about sadness, there are so many layers of sadness, right? There's grief, there's mourning, there is general sadness, there's sadness related to a particular loss, there's so many various varieties of this, right? Crying is a degree of sadness. The quality of it then affects the intensity of it then affects the cognition and the control on it. Okay. Emotions can help us also anticipate and predict behavior. That's also how they prepare us for particular situations. Like I mentioned, you want to ask your parent about a trip. You're going to wait for their emotions to be in a good place because that is adaptive to you. It functions as an adaptive process to you. अगर तुम अपने parent के पास बिना ये चीजें देखे जाओ, then they will say no. And then when they say no, we will feel angry, the whole situation has gone to waste, right? But when we assess these social demands, when we assess these biological demands, we assess what I want out of this situation, emotions, us knowing them can also help us predict other people's behavior and act accordingly. That's how it can additionally play an adaptive function. Okay? Now let's move to disruptive. Any kind of emotions which are very, very extreme, very, very uncontrollable, puts us in a state of less cognition. Lesser cognition means we are more impulsive, we might take risks, we might start saying things that we don't necessarily mean, we might do things that we don't necessarily want to do, and so it can result in a disruptive function. It can also create a lot of bodily disturbances. We already spoke about this in the physiology of emotions and the physiological response of emotions, right? When our body is constantly in an activated state of emotions, what is going on? It is basically creating an environment inside your body where so many hormones are being released all the time, being secreted all the time. Hormones that are typically supposed to only be there to protect us and prevent harm from coming to us are now present in our body all of the time. What happens? All the other bodily functions are not getting those limited resources that we take in every single day, right? And what does that happen? It creates a lack in the body, an excess spending of energy, a decrease in our immunity, a decrease in the function of all of our bodily processes because it is only focused on our emotional overactivity. And so bodily disturbances can happen a lot when we are in disruptive states of emotions. Imagine yourself when you're very, very angry. How does your body feel? It feels heavy, it feels agitated, it feels like there's so much going on. Sometimes uncomfortable, there could be blinding rage sometimes that is going on, right? There is so much that your body is going through when you're experiencing a particular kind of emotion. And so similarly, if you were to experience that level, that intensity, that lack of control, that heightened quality of emotions all the time, can we assess how disruptive it can be to us? That is essentially what bodily disturbances means. All right. Then heightened emotionality. When we have very, very high emotions regarding to things, we are unable to divert our attention away from the matter as well. We'll keep hyper focusing on that very problem area only because the emotion is arresting us to that particular place. What happens then? It is causing a disruptive function because our attention is not able to move away from the problem. हम अपने ही emotions को feed करते चले जा रहे हैं. Okay? Next, preoccupation with the situation could happen. And what happens when you are preoccupied with a particular situation? Maybe in the beginning you didn't feel so intensely about it. It was okay, whatever. It was slightly embarrassing, or it was slightly anger provoking, but it wasn't so bad. But you keep thinking about it, you keep thinking about it, and what happens? That emotional response keeps getting heightened. We get more and more angry, we get more and more embarrassed, right? So preoccupation with situations causes disruptive emotions. Then we come to reacting excessively. When we know that we don't feel so intensely about it, but we get into the reactivity phase of something, and just because we have given a very big reaction, we continue to provoke that reaction over and over again. That is also creating a disruptive function for us. Now, what do we do when all of this is going on? There's adaptive functions, there's disruptive functions, so much is going on, emotions are out of my control. How do I make sense of this? What you can do is practice something called self-regulation and emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence we've already visited together slightly before, but it essentially means being in the driver's seat of your car. Emotions, there's this very nice analogy about emotions which I want to share with you, which is that emotions are like having kids in the car when you are driving. Okay, you definitely don't want the kid to be sitting in the driver's seat and driving the car. You don't want them sitting in the back and creating havoc either, right? You want to keep an eye on them through the rear view mirror and watch what they are doing, monitor them every now and then, realize that they are just kids and they are just being kids while you still continue driving through, right? So that is exactly how you practice self-regulation. We have to analyze about how many emotions are sometimes like passing clouds. We must allow them to give us the information that they want to give us, monitor them wherever required, but still continue on the path of our life as we must. That is the practice of self-regulation and emotional intelligence. It is the opposite of what we understand as this overactivity. It is the opposite of what we understand as instability, right? Regulation is the opposite of instability. The ability to the ability to be able to show some kind of voluntary control on our relationships, on our emotions, is one kind of emotional intelligence practice, self-regulation practice, putting ourselves in the driver's seat. Second, we can also develop these responses as we grow older. We talked about this already. A lot of emotional intelligence comes to us automatically as well as we grow older, as long as we're willing to grow in that space. We talked about this already, about how when you are younger, when a person takes away a pencil from you, that emotional reaction is so high, right? But now that we are older, we are not only able to assess how we are feeling, but we are also able to control where we can be in certain emotional states and where we cannot be in certain emotional states. A lot of emotional maturity also develops because of age and other practices. So this is how adaptive and disruptive functions affect us. This is how we can get into the control seat of our life and try to assess how to make our emotions work for us. No emotion is good or bad. It can both serve an adaptive function or a disruptive function. It is really up to us about how we take control of the situation, how we use our emotional intelligence to understand other person's feelings and our own feelings, and then finally come to an assessment about how can I make this situation work for me and how do I prevent this situation from turning against me. So thank you for listening patiently. That is about adaptive and disruptive functions of emotions.